Welcome to your lecture on waking and sleeping rhythms. This first hyperlink is in your Schoology classroom. It is the SciShow Why We Sleep. I would strongly encourage you to watch it. In psychology, it's common to hear words like consciousness, unconscious, or subconscious. It's important to understand what we're talking about. Consciousness, all the sensations, perceptions, memories, and feelings you are aware of at any instant. Subconscious is usually when we are aware of what's going on around us, but maybe not fully alert to it. You could be aware of someone's gender or race, or even know that an event has taken place, but not have it in the forefront of your mind. Running on automatic pilot allows us to have other conscious abilities kind of in the forefront, allowing us to deal with challenges or new things as they appear in our life. If I were to ask you to recreate this picture of Hello Kitty using your dominant hand, you would probably not have to exert the same kind of attention or effort as if I asked you to do it with your non-dominant hand. In other words, it would be a subconscious activity. If I asked you to switch to your non-dominant, you would have to focus much more and be more consciously aware of your movements and a lot of the things that you don't pay attention to on a daily basis. Daydreams and fantasies are an altered way of looking at consciousness. People who daydream are often what we refer to as fantasy prone. They also are more likely to be hypnotized. If someone is considered fantasy prone, it's about 4% of our population, and they have very vivid and detailed daydreams. Daydreaming actually is adaptive. It helps us prepare for future events, mentally rehearse things. It may even actually be a substitute for impulsive behavior. Imagine having a fight before you have a fight. It can help you kind of leak or release any of the anger or tension that you have and find a resolution without having to, in fact, fight someone. A study was conducted with a sample of Dutch children looking at the type of television programming that they watched during the day and the type of daydreaming styles they had. What they were able to show is that the different types of daydreaming styles, positive intense, aggressive heroic, and dysphoric, usually a term for anxiety, depression, or unease, were heavily influenced by the type of television show that a child watched. Earlier studies provided only evidence that certain types of television content can stimulate daydreaming, but they found that children who watch certain television shows actually use the themes of those shows to represent in their daydreams. A positive, intense daydreaming style was often found to be stimulated by watching non-violent children's programming, and aggressive, heroic daydreaming styles were stimulated by watching violent, dramatic programs. In other words, this is the difference between a creative child playing and another child pretending to be a superhero that they saw on television, wanting to fight or be confrontational. All animals have internal biological clocks, biological rhythms that we follow. These can be periodic fluctuations that will fall into three main categories. We'll talk about circadian, ultradian, and infradian rhythms. Circadian rhythms are the biological rhythms that most people are familiar with, essentially our 24-hour cycle. Humans, however, really are more wired towards a little bit closer to a 24.5-hour cycle. This was determined by putting subjects in a light-restricted environment and seeing when they would naturally wake and go to sleep. There is a structure called the suprachiasmatic nucleus that helps regulate your circadian rhythm. This structure is going to be located in your hypothalamus. Ultradian and infradian rhythms are other rhythms that biologically occur. When we talk about ultradian, think of ultra-frequent. These are going to be rhythms that occur more than once throughout a day. And infradian, think infrequent. They usually happen seasonally, monthly, or maybe weekly. Sleep is going to be a behavior that will fall under both a circadian rhythm and an ultradian rhythm. When we talk about sleep, we're talking about a periodic, natural, and reversible loss of consciousness, often going to be measured using an EEG. It's important to understand that you will have different brain waves during your sleep cycle. When you're awake, you're at beta wave. When you start to slowly get relaxed, you go into alpha wave. Stage 1 is marked by what's called theta waves. These are going to be prominent waves that are just a little less extreme than what your beta waves are. Lasts about 5 minutes. This is when you start to get into a light doze or a sleep. There's still some awareness and you're easily awoken from stage 1 sleep. Stage 2 sleep lasts about 20 minutes. You can still be awoken from this sleep. It is marked by what's called sleep spindles. Those are important for you to remember. Stage 3 and stage 4 are your deepest levels of sleep. This is what we call delta wave. Delta wave will begin in stage 3 and continue through stage 4. Stage 4 sleep or delta wave sleep is your deepest sleep. It is your restorative sleep. We believe that during this time period, you're going to be very hard to awaken, and your brain is doing a lot of work during this non-REM stage. This is a good visual representation of the various stages of sleep. It will be important to note that you go through this cycle more than once in a night, which is why we will talk about it as an ultraradian cycle, even though you may only go to sleep once a night, making it circadian. All the stages we previously talked about are called non-REM, non-rapid eye movement sleep, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once you get through those stages, you actually backtrack through them again. So you go stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, and then you go into REM sleep. REM sleep stands for rapid eye movement. This is when you dream, and this is also when your brain goes back to beta wave, like it was when it was fully awake. It's also referred to as paradoxical sleep. The paradox is that the brain is fully awake and the body is actually very active, but externally the body appears to be paralyzed and very calm. This is due to the pons shutting down motor messages to the body. It's very difficult, almost impossible to be awoken during a REM state. This is the stage that dreaming occurs in. Non-REM occurs during stages 1 through 4, and there is no rapid eye movement. We believe that this entire cycle helps us recover from daily fatigue. Non-REM helps us reinforce academic information and information that we learn that becomes important for memories, while we think REM sleep helps us with motor memories or anything that has a physical component. Each cycle lasts about 90 minutes. If you are sleeping for 8 hours, you will have roughly 4 to 5 full cycles during that time. This is looking at your REM and your non-REM sleep. Notice that you're awake for most of your day. You'll spend most of your sleep time in non-REM and a small portion in REM sleep. When speaking of sleep, we have to talk about the reticular formation. This structure, part of the midbrain, is important for alerting the body to an aroused state or helping you go to sleep. The sending reticular activation system, or the ARAS, consists of afferent nerve fibers running through the reticular formation, and it influences physiological arousal. If we are talking about afferent, these are going to be your sensory nerves. This area of the reticular formation, if it were damaged, would result in the person being in continuous sleep or a state of coma. If they were electrically stimulated, the person would be very alert. We believe that this area really serves as the on-off switch to sleep and arousal. However, it is important to note that the pons and other adjacent midbrain areas also are critical to REM sleep. So there really is no one single structure that serves as the quote-unquote sleep center. Why we sleep is a big question, and there are 3 major hypotheses for why we sleep. 1, it's for energy conservation, or 2, it could be because it reduces exposure to predators and keeps us immobile at nighttime. Or 3, it may be that it's adaptive and it helps restore bodily resources that are depleted when we're awake. We think that the evidence is probably strongest for energy conservation. But when we look into REM and non-REM, it then starts to complicate the picture, and it may be that it's adaptive. Why do we sleep? Evolutionarily, it may be because it's protective, keeping us out of harm's way in the dark. We know that prey who have to graze the most are usually going to sleep the least. It could be to recuperate. It's important for our body tissues to restore, especially the brain, and during the time that we're asleep, our pituitary gland is releasing growth hormone. Not all animals sleep the same. The dolphin here will only sleep with half of their brain at a time. It's important that half their brain is always conscious and awake so they can surface to breathe. That means that there's an adaptive function for sleep for all animals, but the need for it is still something we're trying to figure out. When we have lack of sleep, we have what we call sleep deprivation. Lack of sleep is going to cause fatigue, impaired concentration, will affect your immune system, usually cause irritability, and slows performance. Looking at something simple like the 1 hour change when we spring forward, when we look at accident frequency, we know that when we lose an hour's sleep, we have more accidents than when we gain an hour's sleep in the fall. One of the most famous cases of sleep deprivation is the case of Randy Gardner. In 1964, Randy was a high school student who decided to test sleep for his science fair. He stayed up for 264 hours, and the legend was that Randy was completely fine while going through this experiment. On day 2, Randy had a problem focusing his eyes. He had to give up watching television for the next 11 days. On day 3, he became moody and he had problems with his physical strength and coordination. On day 4, Randy began to hallucinate. On day 8, his speech became slow and slurred. On day 9, he had fragmented thoughts and was unable to finish sentences. By day 11, he was given a full neurological exam, and it's important to note that throughout this, Randy was actually under the care of a physician. He seemed to have normal coordination and adequate balance, but his eyes had rotary drift, meaning that they kind of just trailed off to the side. His speech was slurred and monotone, and he had no attention span. Normal adults rarely go more than 60 hours without sleep, and even going 24 hours without sleep will carry with it negative consequences. Once Randy started to get regular sleep again, all of his previous problems started to go away. It's important that you understand the different sleep disorders, insomnia being the first one. Insomnia is going to be the inability to fall asleep or stay asleep. It can be temporary or it can be chronic. Temporary can be due to worry, stress, or excitement. Think of a small child being excited that Santa's coming. Where chronic, this one becomes more troublesome and is often going to have certain treatments, like adopting a regular schedule, only getting into bed when it's time to go to sleep. If you can't get to sleep, you get out of bed, do something relaxing, stay away from electronic devices, late caffeine, and anything that would keep the brain alert or excited. Many people dealing with chronic insomnia will try sleep pills. The problem with sleep pills is that they don't actually put you into a sleep state, they just put you into an unconscious state, and people who have chronic insomnia will find themselves just as drowsy the next day, even if they've taken a sleeping pill. Narcolepsy is uncontrollable sleep attacks. This is usually going to be something that the person understands is coming on. They will feel an intense state of drowsiness, and because of this, they'll be able to stop themselves from whatever activity they're doing. So say they're driving a car, they'll have time to pull over. It can cause sudden temporary muscle paralysis leading to complete body collapse. But again, it doesn't just happen. There's a bit of an understanding that this kind of drowsiness is oncoming. Sleep apnea is when you stop breathing while sleeping. This is often associated with being overweight, having something like a deviated septum or a broken nose. People who snore often have sleep apnea. This causes a sufferer to wake up repeatedly at night, usually anywhere from 200 to 500 times, meaning that they never get into their actual sleep rhythm. Somnambulism is the correct name for sleepwalking. This occurs during stage 3 and stage 4 sleep, so it does not happen while a person is dreaming. This is when a person gets up and walks around. Now, to be fair, this doesn't happen when you're dreaming, even though people tend to think it does. You're not living out a dream. You're actually in stage 4 sleep, not in REM. Remember, REM sleep, your body gets paralyzed. The best advice is to always gently wake up a sleepwalker because they are prone to accidents and they may leave their home, go out into traffic, fall downstairs. While they are able to move, they're not fully aware of their environment. Night terrors are also a stage 4 sleep disorder. So again, this is not during a dream. It is not a nightmare. Night terrors happen during stage 4, and it is an intense autonomic arousal. In other words, the person goes into fight or flight. They have the feelings of panic and terror. This can last for a couple of minutes. It's more common in children. Most kids grow out of this. However, again, it's important to note that there is no dream with this because it's during non-REM sleep. Nightmares are going to occur during REM sleep, and a nightmare is really just a bad dream. We believe that nightmares seem to occur more towards the end of a sleep cycle, but we're not really sure why. One disorder that is incredibly sad is sudden infant death syndrome, and we spoke about this briefly during developmental psychology. This is when an otherwise healthy baby goes to sleep and does not wake up. Children that are at risk for SIDS can have a monitoring device, and we are learning more and more about this disorder. Why do we dream? Well, we're not really sure why we dream, but we can always go back to Freud, and I will caution you, this is not correct. But Freud said that dreams were wish fulfillment, the royal road to our unconscious. He said that there was manifest content, which was essentially the storyline, and then there was latent content, which was the censored meaning. We do think that dreams might help us process information, consolidate important information from the day, and stimulate neural development. We also think there's a physiological function. It gives periodic stimulation to the brain, preserves neural pathways, and the activation synthesis theory says that essentially dreams just come from this burst of unrelated neurological information. Our brain wants to understand the story, and so it creates a storyline. For those of you who are sleep deprived, you may find yourself in a state called REM rebound. That is when you go to sleep and you immediately go into a REM state instead of going through the normal stages of 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2 REM. Rosalind Cartwright believed that we might actually dream for problem solving. It allows us to creatively think or deal with stressors that happen during the day and figure out an answer to our problems. This actually is when people say think on it or dream on it, you might come up with the answer. So sleeping on something might be a way to get to an answer. Hobson comes up with the activation synthesis model, which again is what I previously described, that our brain wants to make sense of the random neural activation, and that's why dreams can get so weird. Francis Crick suggested that dreaming is a way to rid the brain of useless and nonsensical information. It's important to note that we need the most sleep when our brains are the youngest, and as we get older, we are going to spend less and less time in a sleep state. Newborns need approximately 16 hours of sleep every single day. This is more time in REM than adults. In adulthood, you're going to be in REM for about 20% of the time. You're going to find that your slow wave sleep will start to decline, and your stage 1 sleep increases, which is why often older adults wake up so often. Why do we forget our dreams? Freud said we repressed them, that our dreams were so disturbing that we couldn't manage them in a waking state. The salience hypothesis says that unless it's really emotional and highly important, it's not worth remembering. Interference says that sometimes when we wake up, we have other things going on, and if we don't immediately think about what our dreams were, everything else interferes with it. And there's a theory that cortical neurons that control storage for new memories are turned off while we're dreaming. This is everything that you guys need to know for the sleep portion. Please make sure that you watch the other video on drugs and review the textbook for hypnosis.